So yeah, I'm not trying to do a big pitch about Optimise, but more talk about what we're doing in terms of how we use digital twins and generative AI to reduce energy and carbon in the built environment, and specifically within buildings. So Optimise AI is a spin out of Cardiff University, and really new. We've just set up only about 6-7 months ago out of Cardiff University, and we're trying to deal with, and I think big opportunity, if you like, for digital twins. And I think we all know the opportunity around energy bills reduction and the fact that energy bills are through the roof. We're all feeling that pain. And really importantly, especially with the carbon emissions now, according to the International Energy Agency, we need to reduce this by 50% by 2030, which is 6 years, which is a virtually impossible task, but hopefully, we as a group here with our technology can help us get towards that. And the other big problem, if you like, in helping us in achieving that 50% reduction is the fact that buildings lack data, and they lack good quality data. And 90% of all non-domestic buildings don't even have a building management system. And those that do, most, as I'm sure we've come across ourselves, are pretty ineffective. So we've got a real lack of quality data. And that is, if you like, is the challenge that we see digital twins and generative AI overcoming. So the solution, well, as I just mentioned, how can we use the technology around digital twins and AI to get over this data problem, to actually fill in the missing gaps of data, to actually provide insights that we can actually understand, to be able to make informed decisions of how we operate and improve our buildings. And we can apply those even to data poor buildings. So for instance, where there's literally just a meter reading, for instance. So because we've got a bit of a more technical group on here, this is not a slide I usually show to everybody, but I added it here in terms of the how. So if we start at the bottom, when you've got virtually no data, we start at the very beginning, and you can create an energy model. And then from that, you can develop an analytical model. And then we do data enrichment via the sensors. So via the building management system or the smart meter, you're now putting together an energy model with real data. And we're getting towards, if you like, an initial, what you might call a digital twin. And from that data, then we can see how it's performing against what the model's saying. But we've still got massive holes in regards to the information that's available. And that's where the use of semantics, generative AI, and transfer learning comes in. And that's what we use to fill, if you like, the missing data gaps for that surrogate model. And once we've got that surrogate model with the data that exists and the manufactured, let's call it the modeled manufactured data, then we get to data to knowledge transformation. And that's where we use meta heuristics, or you can use meta heuristics AI models. And that's used to develop the forecasting, the optimization models, and then start generating the recommendations. And that, if you like, then goes to what you call, if you like, the full-blown, the platinum digital twin, where you can use that. Then you're filling in the missing data gaps, you're taking the data that's available, you're filling in the missing data gaps, and you've got good insights that you can then use to optimize, control, and then actuate going forward. So that's, if you like, how you can do it and how we're doing it. In terms of what we've developed, we then developed 3 products: Predict, X, Optimize, and Actuate. One, Predict, is at the macro level, so the city level down to the building level. Optimize then is at the building to the room zone level, and Actuate is at the kind of building and the room level. And we're looking at buildings then without building management systems, those with building management systems, and those with potentially state of the art. And the idea here is we can look at, for instance, one building or up to the whole city level, and by utilizing the basic data that there is from smart meters, for instance, and coupling that with the data models and the digital twin and the generative AI to fill in the missing gaps, we can start getting good insights. And then we're virtualizing the BMS through the digital twin. So the digital twin is providing us with a virtualized BMS that we can actually use to utilize and improve going forward. So I talked about the how. I'll do it a bit now, if you like, in a more cartoon version. So what we do at the predict level is we work at a building or buildings. We couple their smart meter data, how the people utilize the building, large building data sets, so like energy performance data sets, SIBSE, all the different various data sets, geospatial data sets out there, our own ones, and then we utilize generative AI. And the whole point, as I said before, that's filling the missing gaps. And what you can do is basically get the user to give us this information, how they use the building, and then we can then utilize that. Here you can see an example in Cardiff, which is showing how different council buildings within Cardiff are operating at any specific point in time. And we've flagged them as in red, amber, green in terms of are they performing how they should be performing against their targets. And then from that, we can then use from understanding how, if you like, the thousands of similar buildings are performing by the large data sets, how they're currently performing, we could then start giving recommendations of how you can be improving the buildings to get closer to the industry average or better. That, if you like, is a really high level, if you like, helicopter-wide digital twin that you could use across a city or someone's own assets. And it's kind of good to have that helicopter view of how's my asset portfolio performing against where it should be and what are the basic measures you can be doing to improve it. Then at the more individual building level, we can add the building management system if it exists. We can couple that with the building information model and then utilize how the people use the building and the large data sets. And this, if you like, is more of a kind of standard digital twin in terms of you'd think for an individual building. So we take that data from the BMS, we add O&M model information, and then how the building uses, how the people use it. And from that, we can then generate extra savings. So the digital twin allows us to generate further savings than the standard building management system. And the reason for that is because you've got the use of semantics. So you understand the different elements within the building and how they connect together and how there's cause and effect between how they work together. And it gives better intuition in terms of how the user can see a building, improve on it. So here's a quick example in Qatar of one of the buildings of the Qatar World Cup. This is one of the training facilities, I think. And this just goes to show the person doing an energy simulation model in terms of putting up the type of how they'd like to improve the building. What are the scenarios they'd like to achieve around energy, comfort, and interesting in this case, COVID, because we could measure how to improve energy and reduce carbon, but also whilst keeping air quality high, because COVID was really a big thing back when the World Cup was on a couple of years. This year's running a simulation then. I'll just show a couple of other things. So you could then go into the model and see the graphs of how it's performing and then how to optimize it going forward on those type of opportunities. So there's, if you like, an example.
30 seconds left, sorry, Nick.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we can do that from the whole city level right the way down to the room level. It's been tried, tested, delivered it on lots of different projects. So this is not just a concept. We're doing this in real life via Horizon 2020 projects and stuff. We've had them validated. And then why now? I'll finish with that. We're in a climate emergency. It's now or never. Businesses have got to save money. And I think the fact that ML AI now is providing opportunities for how we can manipulate data in ways that we never had previously. And BIM is now becoming more prevalent. So hopefully that was a interesting insight, if you like, into how to use digital twins, Gen AI, to manage energy and reduce carbon in buildings. Thank you.
Next question, I think, is for yourself, Nick. Is when you're presenting, you mentioned that most new buildings in the last decade have BIM models. The question was around where this source is for this, please.
Maybe a bit of a throwaway statement, but I think more the point that there's been the BIM mandate. So there's lots of buildings that do have BIM models, and it's how do we make the most of them? And most of, as we know, buildings that have had BIM models sit on the proverbial CDE shelf. So how can we can really utilize them to actually improve how we're doing it? And we'd love to have people's BIM models because we can do that. So I think that's the point. And at the macro level, you don't necessarily need to have individual BIM models. You're using a geospatial, geometric type model, but it helped. The whole BIM movement has helped us, if you like, with the digital twin adoption.
Very good. Nick, fantastic presentation. Can you comment on the level of accuracy you get on estimates if most building information is missing?
Yeah, so the model calculates the accuracy, and on that varies, if you like, as you go through. Usually the accuracy is around the 90% mark. So the mathematical model calculates the accuracy, and that's validated, if you like, by the actual tangible results as we go along.
Very good. And a follow-on question for yourself, Nick, is you alluded to semantics in your talk. Can you elaborate more? Are you using any standard ontologies?
My gosh, I probably take the rest of the time to go into the detail on that. So the patent actually is about how we utilize the models, and the models help us create the semantics, and that is yeah, how we do it. And yes, we use ontologies, and yes, I think we use standardized methodologies for ontological creation, but probably need someone more technical than me to answer that, and haven't got enough time. Something I can take away if the person's really interested.
Good. And Nick, a question for yourself. Does your data source include weather data to help fill in the data gaps? Can your AI digital twin run what-if scenarios to show how energy and carbon can be reduced?
Oh, so I mustn't have presented well enough, because that's exactly what it's about in terms of how do we it's all about optimize to reduce energy and carbon in the buildings. That's what it's all about. And we take many different data sources, of which weather is an obvious one of them, but including people movement, including air quality, including fabric, lots of things.
Very good. And the link question here again, Nick, for yourself is any of the data or results of your digital twin available for public use?
Um, Yes, it's certainly in terms of the asset, because we have a feedback loop as much as possible with the users of the asset, because that's really important in terms of improving it going forward, and that the machine learning algorithms can learn off it.